devoted a lot of energy and a lot of creativity to build for emergencies, for the poor, and this is remarkable. This is a star architect who also builds for very powerful and rich Swiss companies, but also and not in a weak way. He devotes a lot of energy to architectural social work, if I can call it so. This is the gentleman. It seems he knew something, or he knows something about suffering. Maybe that's why he's compassionate. So Shigeru Ban, born the 5th of August, 1957, is a Japanese architect known for his innovative work with paper, particularly recycled cardboard tubes used to quickly and efficiently house disaster victims. He was profiled by Time magazine in their projection of 21st century innovators in the field of architecture and design. In 2014, Ban was named the 37th recipient of the Pritzker Architecture Prize, the most prestigious prize in modern architecture. The Pritzker jury cited Ban for his innovative use of material and his dedication to humanitarian efforts around the world, calling him a committed teacher who is not only a role model for younger generation, but also an inspiration. True. They work very, very hard, as you know. The Japanese work very, very hard, and the ethics of work in Japan should be an inspiration for all the countries in the world, really. I wouldn't go so far. They apparently they don't even have time for love, for romance. I read that many people prefer to be alone because they actually don't have time for romance, for romantic involvements, for love, and this is sad. But what is not sad is the total dedication to work. And you see him here, probably in Africa, helping physically, with the construction of one of these shelters for a group of people that were displaced. Here he's on a bridge he built in France, I think, a temporary bridge built from tubes, cardboard tubes. He has his theory, and it's actually a beautiful theory, that a material doesn't need to be strong in order to have a structure made of that material to be strong. In other words, even with a weak material, assembled in a certain way, you can get a strong structure. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the philosophy of Lao Tzu applied to architecture. Because Lao Tzu or Lao Tse, there are various spellings for his name, the great Chinese mystic who generated that little book called the Tao, or the Path, claims that what appears to be weak is in essence very, very strong, at least potentially. And he quotes, he names water, which appears to be weaker than the stone, than the rock, but actually in time, water erodes the strongest rock. He also compares the oak with a blade of grass. And he says when the thunderbolt strikes, the blade of grass lowers its head, while the proud oak dies, is paralyzed, is burned by the thunderbolt. So again, the weak, the so-called weak, in certain circumstances at least, could be stronger than the strongest. And the ideology of the weak, if I can call it so, or the wisdom, not the ideology, well, in a way closer to wisdom, to understand the intrinsic powers of what is weak and to use it in such a way that power to actually be able to achieve results. Like in this bridge, apparently 20 people simultaneously walked across this bridge, and it's made of paper, of cardboard. And so there seems to be some truth in what Lao Tzu said and in what Shigeru Ban said. We'll arrive at his quotation a little later on. He's still a kind of a structuralist, but sometimes in a positive way, other times maybe a little bit less in a positive way. But we live at a time still having a lot of confidence in reason, despite the works that we have seen before, which seem to be, governed by different forces. Yes, with his magical, material, he is looking with one of his eyes towards us through it. These columns, that are actually made of cardboard. And he even built a cathedral in New Zealand, using the whole structure is made with cardboard tubes. It's true, very, very large, 60 centimeters in diameter. We'll arrive there. So here he unveils the beautiful cardboard pavilion at Abu Dhabi Art Fair. I don't know if it's so beautiful, but anyway, that was the description in the media. It's a little pavilion. He has works that are much more ample and impressive. But he uses, again, he became known for using paper to build even large-scale buildings. Now, you could say maybe that this is in a certain way some kind of a gimmick, because you don't need necessarily to be so rhetorical about transforming the weak into the strong. But you'll see his activity is very complex and very wide, and this is just one side of his activity. Now, in Aspen, Colorado, he built the art museum, which is different. It was not built with these tubes, and he became interested increasingly interested in using wood, just like Kengo Kuma and other Japanese architects, of course. But I would say particularly Shigeru Ban and Kengo Kuma work with structures made of wood, increasingly complex. What is interesting about this building is that the facade is, appears to be, rather calm and rationalistic, but you have some indications that behind it there might be a different reality, and there is a certain ambiguity present in the facade, and which gives it I would say a certain degree of architectural poetry, without which architecture doesn't become architecture. So yeah, there is the grid, there is the woven grid. It is a woven grid, this facade, but behind it you see various things that incite you to enter and discover. This is more like a geometrized veil made of wood, a woven veil. Essentially it's a box, but it has its mystery because of these half transparencies, half opacities. I believe that the material doesn't need to be strong to be used to build a strong structure. The strength of the structure has nothing to do with the strength of the material. I think he's right. If not always, at least sometimes. And this shows a certain wisdom that probably was born, as it was said, in the Orient and not in the Occident. Now, this kind of structure, it was also used and is used by Calatrava, for example. There are other people who have some kind of a nostalgia for some kind of Gothic Gothic structuralism, except that this is in wood, not in stone.
It's romantic, not.
Pardon? Now you see a golf club from 2010 is actually in Seoul, in South Korea. Personally, I have a problem with this kind of aesthetics for this kind of program. Although I declared myself an anti-functionalist or anti-factionalism, I think that if you make a golf club look like a cathedral, something is not quite right, because a golf club is a golf club, and the cathedral is a cathedral. And I don't know, if you make a golf club like this, how are you going to make the cathedral? You will see, in fact, one. He built one in New Zealand, and is actually more, in a certain way, a little bit less interesting than the golf club. But these are the times we live in. In the Middle Ages, it would have been inconceivable for those who built the cathedrals to assert their homes, not to speak about the so-called clubs, if they had any clubs at all. I doubt they had, to compete aesthetically with the house of God. But maybe he's right. I mean, the golf club maybe replaced the cathedral. I'm sure the president of a certain country now would agree with it. Anyway, there is also a conventional side in him. You saw the wooden structure within those architectonic trees, but you can also see the prism. And there seems to be at times an uneasy marriage between the two. Other parts of the interiors are, maybe not very spectacular, a little bit predictable. They are decent, let's put it this way. Now, of course, where you have reflections, always there is an interesting effect. But as I said, other people were not just Calatrava, other people work in the same way these days. It's some kind of fascination with, with a certain fluidity associated with structure. And this fluidity can be done with various materials, with wood, with concrete, with steel. It does seem to say that he himself, as many others these days, are a little bit tired with rationalism. But the box itself, the big valise, the building is still rational. As you can see, the facade. It's just inside that the columns are not the typical round or square columns, but begin to be more tree-like. It's also maybe to an extent a reflection of a certain nostalgia for nature. We saw it in the case of Arata Isozaki, who in Qatar built that huge building whose canopy supported by monumental, artificial tree, if we can call it so. It's not a tree, but it mimics the shape of a tree. This is a building in Zurich, also made with wood. And I don't know. I'm a little bit ambivalent about this, because I think that our nostalgia for nature and our nostalgia for wood and our love for wood should maybe at times be less activist, meaning less prone to continue to cut down forests and trees just to build other office buildings whose function is essentially anti-nature. I mean, even if we mimic that this building is, closer to our heart because it's made with wood, in essence, it's an office building, and this is not a temple. It's not honoring the gods of the woods. It's not honoring the dead trees that we cut down. I mean, they were not dead, but we made them dead by cutting down the trees. And with all respect for the Japanese architects, I think Kengo Kuma and Shigeru Ban and others maybe should think twice about this proliferation of buildings after buildings after buildings, where we invest a lot in fighting nature, cutting down trees in order to build other office buildings. You know, do we really need more office buildings in the world? I doubt it. I personally think we need more trees. But even the Japanese, who love nature, it's well known, they love nature, but they have no problem to cut down trees after trees after trees in order to slowly but surely cover the whole earth with office buildings and other structures of a similar. To me, there is, I mean, I'm sorry, I celebrate Shigeru Ban, and I wish him happy birthday, but I think it's a level of hypocrisy here. You know, this kind of marriage between steel and wood, you know, the misleading placidity of, not placidity, the misleading, you know, warmth of the wooden column, you know, it's misleading because the activities in this building are not so innocent as they appear to be, and nor is the structure, I think, very innocent. Something I personally think there are here some levels of questioning that are necessary. I mean, do we expiate our sins by building office towers now made entirely of wood? I don't know. I'm not so sure. Plus the discourse is still rationalistic. And in its essence, this building is not so different from the one behind it or the one on its right, except that it is built with wood, but it's the same, you know, mentality behind it, I think. In other words, I don't see enough modesty in this building. In other buildings by him, I do, and will arrive to them. Of course, there are all kinds of sophistications here because, you know, technology advances, and but I still don't think he is about a great affection for wood. I don't feel it. Now, this is a competition he won, and he built it in Paris. Now, here there is it's a cultural and musical center, and it's annoying, actually, a certain reference to a work by Calatrava. You'll understand very soon why. Here, you know, like Calatrava did, and we discussed about that work, is that very well-known work by him in Spain. I don't know. I actually, with all due respect for Shigeru Ban, I have some reservations about him here. You know, I don't see great creativity here, and the resemblance to a building by Calatrava worries me even more. Fortunately, there are other buildings by him, especially those very modest ones, that I totally agree with them, and I applaud them. But you know, this is not, you know, a third world country. It's France, it's Paris. I guess it needed a building, you know, to elevate itself to the standards of urbanity that Paris has, I guess. Anyway, these nomadic museums, well, he built two large nomadic structures, one in Tokyo, one in, I think, Mexico City, in Mexico, and we'll see both. I like this work of his, you know, where he, with in a way, with the simplest means, he built some huge structures, either for a museum or to house a population that deserved, you know, help in terms of housing. He is good at manipulating, you know, architectural entities, either small or large, assembling them to create much larger units. At the entrance, you see the two columns, also built of cardboard. Hard to believe, but it is so. And the whole structure inside is done with these signature cardboard poles, quite large in diameter. And the ones at the church in New Zealand are, you know, 20 meters long, if you can believe it. We'll arrive there. There is a certain, what I like about this side of his work is that there is a certain, if I can call it so, architectural socialism, because he's concerned with humanitarian values and a certain form of collectivism. And he even assembles these buildings from you know, not from bricks, but from, you know, construction entities that are either, you know, cardboard poles or, you know, other industrial ready-made components. Now, this is the Nomadic Museum in Mexico, and I think it's very, very effective. And I think it sits very well. It's a temporary structure, but I think it sits well in that huge square in the capital of Mexico. And I like this collectivism and the concern with social values, and even with a certain kind of arte povera. And there are certain complexities here as well, you know, I mean, formal complexities, but look at the foundations or the, you know, the platform on which the building stands, you know, is innovative, is sincere, is rough or raw, and I think it's fine. And here you have, you know, the beneficiaries of this, I would say, important architectural work done by an important architect. Building for the poor, building for the needy. I think this is very nice, because too often the important architects sell their services to the most powerful and the richest. But here you have an architect who chooses, at least sometimes, otherwise. So in a way, it's the palace of the poor. And I think it's very nice. And I think even the flowers in the foreground are happy. Now we arrive at a different kind of work, the Centre Pompidou in Metz. So the first Centre Georges Pompidou was built in Paris by Renzo Piano and Sir Richard Rogers, with the help of a brilliant engineer, Peter Rice. But now he built this, you know, kind of a branch of the Pompidou Center in Metz. And apparently he was inspired in the design of this museum by a Chinese hat that he bought in Paris. Well, you know, we kind of see the hat now that I mentioned this, but you'll see himself declaring that it was so. Personally, I see here also a kind of unresolved tension between Cartesianism and the fluidity of the hat, because you see the hat is broken, the so-called hat is broken by you know, parts of the building that are less fluid. So there is a little bit of a conflict here, but it's not, maybe very bothering. In other words, there are two systems at work here. One that is fluid, water-like if you want, or hat-like if you want. And then the other one, because if you remove the hat, the so-called hat, you get a different kind of building. But on the other hand, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe it shows some kind of a balance, but it's not perfect harmony. But some kind of a balance between reason and feeling. If we associate feeling with fluidity and reason with 90 degrees angles and prisms and so on. Now, this is a villa he built that also plays with what Boileau would have called l'esprit de géométrie and l'esprit de finesse. Although the curtain, you'll see, is not the thinnest, it's not the most timid curtain in the world, but it's about the spirit of geometry and the spirit of fluidity or capriciousness or in a way, freedom. So he enclosed the structure of the house with two huge curtains, and the curtain is blown in the wind, and you get what you get. And, you cannot you cannot predict the outcome totally, and this is fine. It's fine, So the window is the curtain is asserting its freedom to be blown in the wind and to create some kind of a movement without which the structure that is behind it would lose, maybe a lot. So it's an interesting idea, to veil a whole building with a huge curtain. From 1995, this building. This is the back of the house, probably with a serving spaces. Again and again, it is remarkable the level of experimentation achieved in Japan. Now, house tubes. I admire this work very much. It's done for the poor, it's done for those in need. It is interesting, even aesthetically. This work is done with, not with a lot of expenditures. It serves a social function. And so I think it's a win-win situation, if you want. I admire him for devoting energy and time and resources even to build for those who are not privileged by fate or by who knows what. Very few so-called stars today do something like this. Rem Koolhaas doesn't do it. Zaha didn't do it. Frank Gehry doesn't do it. Peter Eisenman, of course, doesn't do it. Bernard Tschumi doesn't do it. Wolf Prix doesn't do it. But Shigeru Ban does it. Not even Tadao Ando does it. And this comes to me as a surprise because, Tadao Ando is an architect with a certain level of spirituality, and I like to imagine even a certain level of empathy, but he never used his talent to build, for like Shigeru Ban did. So, yeah, this is for me is maybe his best work for me. Now the Christchurch Cathedral in Christchurch, the city in New Zealand, which suffered because of an earthquake, was destroyed. And he rebuilt it with the cardboard tubes that are very, very ample and will arrive at the specific dimensions. He started from the plan of the damaged cathedral, and we'll analyze that. Now, you can see already, and you remember what I said, that the golf club architecturally, at least inside, seem to be more complex than the cathedral. And you know, you wonder, is it correct? Is it correct for a golf club to be more full of expression than a cathedral? I personally doubt it, but anyway. Now he used here fragments from the rose window of the fallen cathedral. He was considerate towards the past, what preceded it. But otherwise, the church is a good building, yes, and it's a temporary building. But I don't know. I keep comparing it in my mind with a golf club in Seoul. You can see, I mean, yes, there is the triangle. So in that sense, there is some kind of an aspiration for the above, for God. But otherwise, is you know, it's a simple building. Really, what is not simple is the fact that he used these poles, cardboard poles that are huge, and we arrive at dimensions very soon. This is the damaged old cathedral. And you can see how he used fragments from the old cathedral into the facade of the new one. Very nice that apparently the most important person in this church is a lady, is a woman. This also gives me great hope. I think women, ladies, are supposed to take over in many fields, including in that of the so-called sacred world. So here we have the tubes, the magical tubes. So more than 90 enormous 60 centimeters, 600 millimeters diameter, 60 centimeters in diameter, 20-meter long cardboard tubes that form the church structure are protected by a polycarbonate roof above and a very solid concrete floor below. So I come back to this picture because I like the way Shigeru Ban looks here. He looks modest. He doesn't look like an arrogant man. And it's not very common for an architect not to look arrogant. Sorry for my little maliciousness. So 90 enormous 20 meters long cardboard tubes, 60 centimeters in diameter, holding the house of God, no, the church structure. And here they are. I wonder what they were used for, these poles initially, because they were not made, to build churches. Now you see in the plan there are certain sophistications here. There is the golden rectangle, and he inserted the plan of his church within the golden rectangle, and he also compares. I mean, it's related to the plan of the old church. This is good. It's good that he worked within the certain limits and suggestions coming from the previous building, previous church.
Then, can I interfere?
Please.
Yeah, I'd been to this original church long back, like in '96, and it was in the center of the city, and that's how the city got its name, Christ Church. So I guess this building that he's built is also equally important as it's the city center.
Well, I don't know if it's equally important. It was built temporarily until they decide what to do to rebuild the cathedral as it was before the earthquake, or to build a new one. Yes, I mean it is important because it is used in lieu of the previous one. But from what I read, is only a temporary one, a temporary solution. Now, from a church, we arrive at the garage, center of contemporary culture. Of course, this sounds like Moscow. It's actually a museum, but I don't know why it's called the Garage Center of Contemporary Culture. And this work I don't like so much, to be honest with you. Maybe he commented somehow on the communistic, socialistic culture of Moscow before Russia became Russia again. I don't know, but it bothers me a little bit, this rhythmic. It reminds me too much of Soviet aesthetics, and I think he could have done better. But who knows? Who knows what the demands were of the clients? Plus, it's so central, and this bothers me. It's if you compare it with a Centre Pompidou in Metz, you see two different kinds of aesthetics and two different kinds of buildings. This one, for my taste, is a little too regular and too predictable and too placid. You might call it garage, but I don't know. I don't think it is a great building. Yeah, it doesn't matter. He used the well-known, the signature cardboard poles. They are still mimicking a colonnade, a Greek or otherwise, and it has to do with authority, and maybe that's why I'm reluctant to easily accept it. Anyway, I mean, Bernini's colonnade in front of the Vatican, in front of San Pietro, I can accept that work much more than I accept this one. Architecture and humanitarian activities, Shigeru Ban. Yes, Shigeru Ban, we appreciate this and we applaud you for this. Now, this is an exhibition where he transformed. Hello, I hear a dog or something. Yeah, it's an exhibition with his works. When I think about how much, of course, exhibitions are nice, but when you think about the immense amounts of money spent for these exhibitions, like, for example, I know at the retrospective of Frank Gehry's work at the Guggenheim Museum in New York, I read that just to transport the models of his buildings from the West Coast to the East Coast, meaning to New York, they spent $8 million. $8 million. I mean, just for that. And, I actually think, we deserve some of the crisis that we go through, because we spend foolishly, we maybe now with all kinds of problems, we are forced to be less flamboyant. But even here, can you imagine to transport these approximately fragile structures, to bring them here in this space? And anyway, paper emergency shelters for Byumba refugee camp, Rwanda, 1999. this heroic and modest side of his work I admire very much. You know, because I do think that an intellectual, an artist, an architect, a true heart would be kind of left-oriented, meaning towards people who need us, people who are less privileged, and I cannot conceive of anything else, you know. So I have the greatest sympathy for Shigeru Ban for doing something like this. Now, Paper Log House in Turkey, and I don't know, this was moved to India because I know some of his works are transported and transportable from one place to another. Maybe they were done both in Turkey and India, or initially in Turkey and then moved to India. Beautiful, you know, to provide houses, accommodations for people, not just children, for everybody who need them, is I think can be very rewarding. And
Dan?
yes.
Yeah, there was a earthquake in Bhuj in 2001. It was a severe earthquake, and I guess these houses were given to the people who lost their houses.
Yes.
And what you see in this picture is a cradle, which has got, sorry, the picture, the one before. That's a cradle for a small child. It's gone anyways. Okay, you can continue.
What do you mean a cradle for a small child?
That slide that slide shows this. That's a cradle which we use here in Gujarat for a child. Like it sleeps in that cloth, and you can swing it.
Right.
That piece of
Okay,
furniture
I understand. So the piece of furniture on the left inside the room, yes.
and it's specially polished with a kind of lacquer. That's a local cultural way of polishing it with designs.
Right, for the enjoyment of the baby, of course.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Yes. And I love the covering. I love everything. I would leave myself in such a room and together with these people. Real people, you know, real people who don't damage actually the earth as some of the others who play golf do. Anyway, here are the builders. Yes, I think the Pritzker Prize jury evaluated well, you know, this side of his work, the humanitarian efforts that he puts into serving the disadvantaged. Now, a small intermezzo, if you allow me. This is not by him. While I was searching for samples of his work, I discovered an interesting house, well, cultural building built in France by a French architect. So I thought, why not include it in the presentation, although it is not by Shigeru Ban. But I think it's a good building. Sorry, I anticipated. Sorry, he built in this Mulhouse in this town in France, social housing. And after this, you'll see a cultural building built also in the same town by a French architect. Yeah, this one. And the name of the architect, he's young, rather young, Paul Kernek, the cultural center in Mulhouse. So Shigeru Ban built this social housing for the people in this town. It's obviously not an affluent town, but the cultural center built by this French architect is astonishingly good, considering that maybe they didn't have a lot of money. This is the architect. He's also good looking. Hello, sir. Hello, Paul. I think you are a good architect. And this is the building. And you know, when I discovered it, I said, wait a minute, this building needs to be present in the PowerPoint presentation. And it moves me even more knowing that this was not built in Paris, or I don't know in what city. It was built in Mulhouse, a town with a poor population. And everything is good. Look at the plans. It's dynamic, it's distorted, it has a duality, it has life, and it has tension. I think he's a good architect. I'm actually curious when he was born, so we could celebrate him. Maybe he built some other buildings. And again, the power of the diagonal. I like the diagonals, and here you have almost diagonal as obvious as the diagonal in Barcelona. But the spaces are interesting, not just the graphics of the plan. So again, this is not by Shigeru Ban, but I don't think this building is inferior to some buildings by Shigeru Ban. And even during the construction, it seems interesting. I read, but in the meantime, I forgot exactly. He worked with the colors to identify certain areas within the building. I think this is the architect. I don't know exactly, is he, flying or something? An interesting architect. How he arrived on that, window, I don't know, but he did. And what is he doing here also? I don't quite understand, but I guess with Photoshop or something, you can create all kinds of interesting effects. Maybe this is what he wanted to suggest with his spaces, that they are invitations to freedom, to movement, to... Back to Shigeru Ban. This is not a French architect, this is Shigeru Ban, with a strange painting there on the wall, that continuously, total blackness. I know he likes blackness because he always dresses in black, but from here to also have a large painting all black is maybe it expresses his pessimism. I don't know. Now I don't know about this piece of furniture. It's a little bit too postmodern for my taste, but it's done with cardboard poles. Now this is a villa which I don't like so much, maybe because it's a villa. I don't know. It's huge, and I don't know. It's not one of his best works, I think, but he did it. He built it. You wonder, it's not a stadium, a small stadium. It's a villa. It's a villa for 2 or 3 people. By the way, of 2 or 3 people, I once lived for a while with one of the architects who built one of the houses that Bill Gates lives in. In fact, the very house where he lives in, he probably has several, but his main residence. And he told me, this architect from Hong Kong, that he has 27 bathrooms in his house. So Bill Gates, who is very concerned about saving water in Africa, has no problem at all to have 27 bathrooms in his own house, where he lives with his wife and maybe 2 or 3 more people who help them with domestic tasks. Anyway, back to Shigeru Ban and his villa. Well, obviously, this building was not built for the underprivileged, but for someone who could afford a large piece of land. I don't know if you noticed yesterday. Well, you didn't notice because I didn't play the video with Su Fujimoto, but Su Fujimoto is very fond of the word cozy. Every time he tries to explain that someone finds a pleasure in a certain place at home, or not necessarily just at home, in a library, that place is probably cozy. He likes the word cozy. This villa to me doesn't have many places of coziness. It is said that a dog, where a dog likes to sleep, that's a home. That the dog feels when a house is a home, because the dog lowers itself and falls asleep in the sun or not. For Sufujimoto, is being cozy. Here I don't see anything cozy really. This could have been a small museum or anything else, but not. And it's so blank towards the outside, it's anyway, he did it. And in a certain way, his building is an insult to all the other buildings around, because look at them, the others are, for mortals, while this one is for a god or for gods. Paper church in Kobe, the same Shigeru Ban that we know, but a different expression, is one of his earlier works with a paper with cardboard tubes supporting the church, the building. Now we arrive at a work that is, I don't know if it is finished, is one of his latest works, done in Switzerland, of course, for famous watchmaker Omega and Swatch. And the Swatch new headquarters in Biel is a wooden snake. And indeed, it is a wooden snake. We see the project first, and then images from the built building. Too bad that this wooden structure is, it is hidden underneath the covering. You can see it inside, but not towards outside. But it is an interesting building. But it's the headquarters of a famous watchmaker, and I guess why not? I don't see very well the relationship between the snake and the watch, or the watch industry. But this kind of aesthetics is fashionable these days. Many people work with, embroidered structures made of wood or something else, with snakes or some other kind of animals. Anyway, I think it's okay. It could have been much worse. These are renderings of the beginning of the building of the structure. Now you're beginning to see how it looks like finished. Yeah, it's well done. Except that when you look at it from above or from the outside, you don't expect the wooden structure, which was very beautiful actually, and you'll see images of it during the construction. Here it looks more like a lizard, like a snake, but you don't anticipate or you don't expect to have the wooden structure as it actually is. That's how it was built. And then it was covered with the snake skin. There are interesting complexities here, structural. Yeah, but I wonder a little bit about, to what extent these complexities are truly something else and not some kind of tour de force. There is a certain level of exhibitionism. I can show you building by Studio Fuxas or Massimiliano Fuxas, which is almost identical, except that it's built with metal in Milan. And even the Musée de Confluence by Kopp Himmelblau in Lyon has. So there are certain mannerisms, like for example, this, how to call it, this, I'm beginning to forget English, you know. I know what I want to say. This kind of vortex pointing downwards is very fashionable these days. Several people, some of the most important architects, use it almost identically. I mentioned Studio Fuchsias, and you can double check in Milan or Le Musée des Confluences by Kop Himmelblau, and even the BMW headquarters, also by Kop Himmelblau. Now, we saw already this building in Paris. Here I just came afterwards, I came across the project that he won with the Cité Musicale. And here the structure, the wooden structure is similar. Well, in the end, I think he built it with metal, not with wood. Like in Biel in Switzerland. I don't know, this work for my taste is a little bit too commercial, but so this one we saw, the incredible cardboard cathedral in Christchurch. Here is like nothing can be so infuriating for you, the listeners, than a speaker who doesn't find his words, and you have to wait. I apologize. It's just a short review of what we already saw. But we see other things, like, for example, Shigeru Ban transforms 90,000 eyeshadow containers into a glittering wave at the Venice Biennial or Biennale. So he used eyeshadow containers and he created this surface. And I find it amusing, you know, with a fragile little box for, you know, eyeshadow containers. Women should know better than me what this is. 90,000 of them, and he built this, you know, big structure. His theory being, as we already know, that with a component that is not necessarily strong, you can build a strong structure. He seems to like lizards or snakes, because even here, you know, you could almost see the cowboy boots of Daniel Lipskin, you know, the lizard skin at a very large scale, of course. And you see the component. Now, I don't know. I mean, maybe, I hope he didn't destroy the, you know, the contents, you know, and this could have been used to make 90,000 women happy. Instead, he built this structure, which I don't know, was it worthy? Maybe yes, maybe not. Okay, top projects by the Pritzker 2014, Shigeru Ban. We saw that one is Pompidou in Metz. Now we see his contribution to an exhibition where Su Fujimoto also presented his work, which I showed the other day. And this is what Shigeru Ban did, maybe less. In fact, on the left is the proposal by Su Fujimoto. I don't know, this house by Shigeru Ban leaves me cold, really. But anyway, it's done by him. And I mean, by comparison, I like much more what he built in India or Turkey or Mexico and so on. Now, what is this, a house or a garage? You know, it could be both, I guess. And he covers it in, you know, with this plastic clothing, I don't know. Anyway, paper emergency shelter for Haiti, again a noble action, because Haiti needed such noble action. And here he is. He's good at building very quickly these shelters, which are also architecturally, you know, innovative and simple and economical. Good work. And here he is with the builders. Very nice. I'm all for something like this. Container temporary housing in Onagawa, 2011. When a powerful earthquake devastated the Japanese town of Onagawa in 2011, Shigeru Ban was quick to design and install temporary disaster relief housing built from paper tubes and shipping containers. The lightweight, affordable, and clean design provided fast relief to the earthquake survivors while simultaneously lifting spirits with its dignified design. Good. If architecture can succeed in lifting spirits, that's a lot. It's not great architecture, but it was not meant to be great architecture. It's about something else here. Imagine having no home and then all of a sudden having this. It's not so little. And this is what they fought against. Incredible, no? Maybe that's why Dan Coma, when he lectured here in Bucharest, he named his lecture "Defeated Architecture," because yes, catastrophes happen. This one we saw. So the Met-6, it was an extension of the Pompidou Art Center, as I already said. Its undulating roof, made up of a hexagonal pattern, was inspired by the woven structure of a Chinese hat that Shigeru Ban found in Paris. I mean, he didn't find it, he bought it. But anyway, I guess was both finding it and buying it. Now this is the bridge that we saw a picture of with him on it, the cardboard bridge. Can you imagine a bridge made of cardboard over Gardon River in France? In another display of paper structural might, Ban transformed cardboard tubes and recycled paper plastic composite into a bridge spanning the Gardon River in southern France. The temporary masterpiece, I don't know about this word, but anyway, maybe it is a masterpiece, was created out of 281 cardboard tubes and was strong enough to support 20 people at a time. Unfortunately, I don't think I have another picture. The paper station system, also in Japan, designed his fourth iteration of the paper partition system, which provide privacy in existing emergency shelters. Constructed from paper tubes, white canvas sheets, and safety pins, these pop-up partitions were financed with donations from around the world. So he's the emergency architect par excellence. This one we saw, and we talked about it. Now the building in Zurich we also saw, and then the post-tsunami Kirinda project in Sri Lanka designed 100 small homes for Sri Lankan villagers displaced by a tsunami in Kirinda. The tiny homes are built from earth bricks and locally sourced rubber tree wood. And this one we saw. The paper church in Kobe we saw. Now we arrive at the end of the presentation. I saw this work myself at the Venice Biennial in 2016. He collaborated with a South Korean artist. It wasn't very clear to me what his actual role was there. It was more like her role. And not far away from it was the contribution from Peter Zumthor, which was, I thought, totally inappropriate for this Venice Biennial, which was meant to be the biennial of the poor. But Peter Zumthor didn't give a damn about it, and he sent one model, a fragment of a model he built the scale 1 to 10 of his museum in Los Angeles, which happily was not built. Anyway, here it is, the artist from South Korea, and the lower corner, Shigeru Ban and her. She did some kind of, artificial garden that was meant to evoke. I forgot the details. I think the frontier between South Korea and North Korea, an area where there might have been nature and the intervention of man to symbolize some kind of a meeting between the two, if I remember correctly, but I could also be wrong. But what exactly he did, I don't know, because it was mainly her work. Here they are with Aravena. Aravena is on the right, the curator of the exhibition, or the director of the exhibition. There is well, now he works for Foster and Associates, a young Romanian architect who worked for a year for Aravena in Santiago de Chile, in Chile. Victor Moldovan. Okay, and this is the installation the artist from South Korea and Shigeru Ban did together. It was nice. I walked on that, passageway, but it was very, very dark, darker actually than this picture evokes. Now, this is a project that I don't think he built yet, the Mount Fuji World Heritage Center. I think every time he approaches a certain level of centrality, his work becomes a little bit problematic and a little predictable, I would say. But this is my subjective view. Maybe I'm wrong. Yes, you see the famous Mount Fuji in the back, which is the mythical mountain of Japan. Sorry, and that's it. I ended with him, and now I will go to the third part of the presentation. This is Shin Takamatsu, a very different architect. And I think you will be surprised by his works. I am not going to show you his latest works because they are not so good, but I'll show you a number of his earliest buildings. This is the gentleman. He didn't receive the Pritzker Prize. So Shin Takamatsu was born also on August 5th in 1948. So 9 years older than Shigeru Ban. Is a leading Japanese architect and professor at Kyoto University. Takamatsu's futuristic looking buildings often use anthropomorphic or mechanical imagery. He doesn't seem to be happy, although he built a lot. Some drawings. He drew exquisitely. I didn't see amazing drawings by Shigeru Ban, nor by Su Fujimoto, but the drawings and the renderings of Shin Takamatsu are formidable. Here is a building that was built, a dental clinic. You can almost see some kind of reference to dental problems in the corner of the plan, particularly the one on the right, not the one at the bottom, but the one above. Very strange buildings, very mechanical, and with the exception of the works that were influenced by postmodernism, like this one, for example, which doesn't warm my heart at all. This building we are going to see later on in detail. It's called Syntax. And these are renderings. These are drawings done by him or by someone in his office. But I imagine at the beginning, he drew a lot. well, this postmodern phase in his work I find problematic, but that's because I don't like what is called postmodernism at all. And he was indeed a futurist, and he is not any longer. He doesn't do this sort of thing any longer. You know, only when he was young, he indulged in futuristic projections. Now we see a dental clinic, which is strangely called the Pharaoh Dental Clinic. I don't know. Personally, I don't know if I would enter without some trepidation into such a dental office. You know, my imagination would probably become morbid thinking about those three, you know, kind of chimneys. You know, I would see myself being burnt or something in this office, dental clinic. It's a strange building, but it's an interesting building and it's a unique building. I don't think there is any other kind of dental office like this in the whole world. Very different from Shigeru Ban. They were born on the same day, but very, very different architects. The level of detailing and the exquisiteness of everything is incredible. Sorry, that image belonged to a different building. So this is the dentist's office. Shin Takamatsu. Everything, you know, crafted for the occasion. I don't know. I mean, there is a certain triumphalism here that when you think about the humiliating pain humans suffer because of teeth, you know, I don't know if there is such a reason for triumphalism or triumphalist gestures. Probably not. I know that when I have a toothache, I simply cannot imagine this kind of architecture. No. I could imagine the gutter and myself suffering like a dog in the gutter, but not something like this. Anyway, maybe his experience with dentists was different. Now, showroom in Kyoto. I didn't see Kyoto, but if the pandemic goes away, maybe we should all go to Kyoto because Kyoto is Kyoto. You know, it's the spiritual center of Japan. And there are also the buildings by Shin Takamatsu and many others, but also incredible temples and Zen gardens and so on. But this meeting between the old and the new in Kyoto is astonishing. It's a showroom, but you know, one of a kind. Now we arrive at another building by him. This one, I'm not sure if it's in Kyoto or in Tokyo. There is a certain medievalism in his architecture because some of his buildings are fortress-like or even castle-like to an extent. Some kind of a medieval modern in a way in the context of Japan. I don't know what this is, but it's part of that building. Maybe an artwork, a sculpture, I have no idea. I couldn't find too many pictures with this one. Now we arrive at another building also in Kyoto. So he's a professor in Kyoto and he builds a lot in Kyoto. I don't know if this is another dental clinic or not. Very rhythmical, a little bit aggressive for my taste, and militaristic because of the rhythm of these vertical elements. but it's well crafted, and the narrow elevation is very well known because it was publicized extensively. This one. In a certain way, Shigeru Ban is more predictable than Shin Takamatsu. Shin Takamatsu created some very, unique buildings. Unfortunately, he couldn't keep up with himself. His later works are rather banal. But another building, I don't know if in Kyoto, I didn't write, but you see, he uses structure also for ornamental reasons, and there is something of the formalism of the postmodernism here, but there is also, because he doesn't use explicitly borrowed historical forms, his building still has a certain level of freshness, if I can call it so. So he is very creative. But in Europe, for example, he might have something in common with Raymond Abraham to an extent. But Raymond Abraham built less than Shin Takamatsu. Now, one of these two buildings, there are two, Origin 1 and Origin 3, doesn't exist any longer. I don't know which one. Maybe Origin 1. Again, you see some kind of medieval modern, some kind of a tower or castle, but it's abstracted, it's transformed. There is a metamorphosis here. And the level of the details, everything is unique. In the formal, in a formal sense, he's very, very innovative. Now, this is Origin 1. I still don't know if this one or the other one. One of them does not exist any longer, but they continue to exist in pictures. And look at the entrance in this building. It's mysterious. It's even a little bit threatening. It's a creation. The whole of it, And yes, you can see the anthropomorphic side of his work that was mentioned in that short text before. I mean, there is a certain darkness here, I mean, from someone, I mean, the assessment coming from someone born in the land of Dracula, there is a certain darkness here. And if you remember how he looks like, you can tell that he's a man, maybe sometimes with some dark thoughts. Anyway. But look at this, an amazing facade and an amazing elevation, you don't know exactly what is going on there, but it is complex, it is visceral, it is mechanical, it is mechanicist, it is colorful, it is industrial, it is avant-garde. And it is also because of the reference to the castle, to the Middle Ages in some way. He's a complex man. You see the old in the foreground and the new in the background. Architecture, sub 1, a very different building, no? He was obviously not afraid to take risks. This is the tower that we saw before. This one in the background. But here in a rendering, He can craft anything. Now, a community center, also in Japan. You will see also a building by him in Berlin, in Germany. Yes, there is something a little bit threatening because of this militaristic rhythm. Now we arrive at the building in Berlin. Was built, I think, in 1995. So Frankfurter Allee, but this is the text from his website and the English is not perfect, is located on a typical area in old East Berlin where condensed the urban design based on the classical style in socialism. After unifying East and West Berlin, the mission of this project in this area where was suddenly designated as main commercial developmental area is to construct the urban architecture that contains overwhelming presence foreseeing the advent of the new city. Sorry for the English, it's not mine. This is the building and it is Shin Takamatsu and it is, I don't know if he built any other building in Europe, but this one was built in Berlin, in the eastern part of Berlin, after the fall of the wall. In a way, it's more subdued than what he built in Japan. A beauty college, Omula Beauty College in Tokyo, I think. He likes the masks, you know, the Anthropos mask, the Anthropos face, and then abstracted more or less. There is also a quest for primitivism, you know, something that I think we could inspire ourselves from, particularly since architects very rarely did so, as opposed to the great modern painters and sculptors who very often were very inspired by so-called primitive art, but not architects. Now he is an incredible builder. You know, look how the surfaces are articulated, and you know, the complexity, and also a certain level of simplicity. Maybe because it has to do with beautification, it's some kind of a metaphor, the facade, for the work on the face, the human face. Now, another very interesting building in Tokyo, and it's so interesting that I don't understand what is going on here. Details, phantasmagoric, fantastic, surrealist. You know, you could say they are frivolously without a reason to be. I don't know. They seduce me with their complexity, with their logic even, although they are probably born from irrational impulses. And then inside, indoors, you have, it's a stage design of quite cryptical. And look at this, this is the main elevation. It is a fragment of the main elevation. You know, I find it amazing. Now, his powers of invention are not ordinary, no. And these are not just drawings. This was built just like this. What you see is what you get. Now, unfortunately, the naming, it's a temple, but it's badly translated into English, and I apologize. It's a worship hall, it's a temple. And it's not bad, it's actually interesting. Look at this. Now you tell me what's going on here. Is it a photoshopped image? No, it's not. This is the temple. This is how it looks like. And yes, it's Shin Takamatsu at his most amazing in a way. Outdoors in as much as indoors. I don't know if these are the famous cardboard poles of Shigeru Ban, but they look like them. Maybe he collaborated with Shigeru Ban for this work. I don't know. But it's very, very interesting. And you do have some certain, oblique reference to the forest of columns that the great German poet Hölderlin talked about. The forest of columns, and then you have the ceiling that is, in a way celestial in terms of its aspirations. You still have a little bit of touch of postmodernism here, which is a little bit bothering, but all in all is an interesting building. Not very large, but there are levels of trompe-l'oeil here. You don't quite understand what is happening there. As opposed to the building underneath, which is very clearly, decipherable and identifiable. No, he manipulates the geometry with in unconventional ways. It's a place of worship. That worship is worship. It's a temple. Now, this is the cover of a book on his work, and interestingly, the subtitle is Architecture and Nothingness. I didn't see the book, I didn't read it, but it intrigued me that architecture and nothingness. I wonder what he meant. But the Japanese are sometimes cryptical, but they are always anchored in some kind of deep philosophy. Even when they build, a small house, there is always some philosophy behind their constructive gestures. And the metaphysics of architecture, I think, are very, very important. And unfortunately, they are so very often forgotten, but not by the Japanese. I have a collection of the Japan architect, and many architects, Japanese from the 50s onward, 60s, 70s, 80s, they have the level of theory is very high. And that's because for them, reality is not what we see, not only what we see and what we touch, not only facts, but there is also the immeasurable, the hidden, the mental, the psychological. And those often we Europeans or North Americans neglect. Anyway, now we arrive towards the end. The Syntax building in Kyoto is an important building by him. We already saw an image or two with it. It's called the Syntax building. And here again, you have articulation of detail and the whole quite convincingly done. Some kind of imperfect or betrayed symmetry. You see the building seems to be perfectly symmetrical, but when you look at the diagonals on these doors or windows, you would have expected this one to be the other way, to be perfectly symmetrical. So just like on a human face or often in nature, there are cases of betrayed symmetry, as I call it. I don't know why it was called the Syntax, but even the name is kind of intriguing and invites one to investigate further. Of course, the functionalists will say, well, most of the things are useless. Well, we can also look in the mirror and we see all kinds of so-called useless things on our own face. and look at this detail. You know, it's magical. You know, even if it's not a balcony, you don't know exactly what it is, but it doesn't leave you indifferent if you love architecture. And it's unique. It's a creation. It doesn't copy anything here. I mean, you know, this building is banal. It's prosaic, but his, you know, you might not like it, but it doesn't leave you indifferent. It's a special building. And these are the plans. You saw this drawing before. These are renderings, I think, done by himself when he was very young. This is an early building by him. This is an interesting idea to show shadows in the plans and in the sections, of course, because then you visualize better the spaces. And anthropomorphic it is. Okay, I stop here. I had other works by other Japanese architects, but I think for today it is enough, if you allow me to end this presentation.